Welcome to Inside the Upside Down. Tonight we have an interesting show. We're going to be talking about mysterious graves at cemeteries. So we've done a lot of different cemetery shows before, so this is a little bit of a different take, but it gets a little deeper into some things that we've been doing as of late. If any of you watched the latest Friday night video that we posted, then you'll get an idea of where we're headed. So I see some people starting to fill up into the chat. That'll go by real quick. Of course, yes, we're back. And I do apologize for Shauna not being here, but she's been dealing with a massive headache all night. She was in there with the lights off, and then her youngest has been feeling, he has a fever going on right now, so she's taking care of all that. So I'm going solo tonight. It's been a while since I've had to go solo, so it's all right. I'm going to go ahead and be a little rude at the moment, and I'm going to go ahead and get onto my my phone here and share this out because since we're doing this on Facebook at the moment instead of YouTube, it's a little bit of a different thing here. So, of course, now that I am here on the phone, it is not showing me what I'm actually looking for here. So fantastic. Thank you very much, Facebook, for being difficult with me right now. You know, you'd think, okay, it would show me, here's the live stream. No, not at all. I'll give a few minutes and see if it'll update, and then let me share it out. Jeez. Technology. So, and Donna Gorton said that she has shared it in a White Rabbit Notification Squad. Yes, those that are part of the White Rabbit Notification Squad, please share it out. That's the whole idea, is that because even here on Facebook, people don't get all the different notifications. YouTube doesn't get all the notifications. They don't all go out to everybody who wants them. So White Rabbit Notification Squad, those are those people in that group that have agreed that, hey, you know, when something goes live, when something gets posted, we're going to all share it out, and Donna makes sure that group is updated so that people are aware of what the link is and what the latest updates are, in case those that are on the squad haven't seen it yet. So works out pretty well. All right, so of course I gotta scroll down the chat here because that's Facebook for you. All right, so yes, I do hope that Shauna feels better soon as well. So cemeteries, mysterious graves at cemeteries. So this was really, really interesting. It was about a month ago now, I want to say, that we went and visited the cemetery, Vaughn Hill Cemetery in Wood River, Illinois. In fact, it's probably nicer weather then than we have right now with all the rain that we've been having lately. It's crazy. But we were there. We were just, kind of tracking down the Wood River Massacre, which occurred in the early 1800s. Most people right now have agreed that it happened in 1814. And an early grave marker, an account of an early grave marker, pretty much does put it at 1814. But if you read old newspaper accounts, you'll see anything ranging from 1809 to the 1814 date that this happened. And basically, as people were settling the area, of course, people pissed off the local Native Americans. And one night, there were 3 of those Native Americans that came into the camp. And there was only one woman and a whole bunch of children that she was watching at that time, and they murdered them, scalped them, and murdered them. The only one left alive, or was still living when everybody else found them later on, was the 3-year-old. And you can imagine scalping a 3-year-old. It's ridiculous, but it happened. He ended up passing away from the wounds, of course. And they were all buried at Vaughn Hill Cemetery there in Wood River. And there's a monument there to this day. Different than what had been there before. There were, I guess, a couple markers there. The way they were buried was, kind of these makeshift coffins. So we were there to check this out and follow up on the story. There was one particular day that we had driven by the one monument that off on the roadside that signifies, hey, back here, however many hundreds of yards, is where it actually happened. So we took that bit of information. Thankfully, Shauna was looking out the window and spotted the monument. I'm just driving down the road. Supposed to be paying attention to the road, but she spotted the monument. It was like, hey, let's check this out. So we did. And so we've been following up on it ever since. And one of the interesting things that we came across was with Milton Cemetery, there were some connections there to Wood River. So we're having to go back now and figure out, okay, how is Milton Cemetery also associated with the Wood River Massacre when this, monument and all the graves are supposed to be here? But that's not the biggest mystery of this cemetery. We were finding all kinds of other things there as well. And probably the most mysterious of all were these little graves. I don't know, they were probably about, 5 by 12, maybe 12 inches long, like a foot long, maybe, probably about 5 or 6 inches wide. And they were just marked male, female, like all down the row. We found like 5 rows of them. In the video that we posted, we showed 3 of those rows, and later on, as we were coming back around the cemetery, we found 2 more rows. So I'm going to play a clip that I tossed up on Instagram and let you guys, no, this isn't the Instagram one. This is actually a clip from the video that was posted on Friday, and then I'll show you something a little bit later on from Instagram. So, and so Shauna is down in the chat. Okay, so she's actually there in the chat, and I see Kia's down there as well. Yes, Heather Steele, old lost cemeteries are the best cemeteries. We have done some abandoned cemeteries. We'll get to those in a little bit, some abandoned cemeteries that, way back in the woods. Those are really interesting to us. So let's go ahead and get to, here we go. So this is what I was describing, these little markers just labeled male, female, male, female. Really, really interesting. There's no larger marker to tell us what these are, whether they're from, whether they're child's graves or from an orphanage or some sort of asylum. No idea. So here's the video clip from the video from last Friday. No, there's nothing telling us what these are. More here too. Male, male, female, male, female. What is this? All right, and that's just kind of examining the stones as we're walking through. So there's we have much more to that clip, of course, in the bigger video. Deanna Bosley says, I love a good cemetery prowl. It's kind of funny because we call them cemetery crawls. So pretty similar, prowl, crawl. So Shauna and I have spent the better part of, I don't know, Shauna, what is it, the last week, maybe? I know we had several days here just recently where we were going through, I was going through old newspaper articles. Shauna was hitting some different resources that I know she was Googling some stuff, but she's a member of some different groups, and so she was posting in these different groups trying to see if anybody had heard of these or seen these before. And we've gotten some great, or at least Shauna has gotten some great feedback out of those groups before when we've posted, hey, we came across this abandoned building, and all of a sudden, like a few minutes later, somebody pops back, boom, this is the building, here's an old historic photo of it, and I'm like, whoa, that's cool. So she's been working on that. I was going through the old newspaper articles. We cannot find a thing about these old stones. We have found all kinds of other information about this cemetery that, basically it's the oldest cemetery in the area. The land was originally used, a meeting house was built on that land. And so, they were having like church meetings and things like that there. The community would gather and, for important functions, in the early development phases of the area. And so a little bit later on, after it was used for the meeting house, Vaughn, I forget the first name, he basically deeded the land to be used as a cemetery where people would be buried. And there's a interesting early story there of Samuel Pruitt, how he rescued a Native American girl and basically took her in as a daughter. She lived into like a young adulthood, and she's like one of the first people that had been buried there. So, as you're reading through some of the different articles, going through some of the different information, it's funny how you'll see some references. Oh, Indians were buried here, or one reference was Indian girls were buried here. And as you dig deeper and deeper, it's like, oh, there was a Native American girl that was buried here. But he basically found her. She had been abandoned, by her people. I forget exactly what she had going on. We're going to post a lot more on this later when we get a deeper video on this. But she had basically been abandoned, and he found her and took her in and raised her as a daughter, and she eventually passed away. So, yeah, and see, there's the chat has gone way bonkers. For whatever reason, when I go live, the chat doesn't scroll very well. So, Bree Jones, I know Donna was supposed to be sending me some stuff. So doing this as one person, because usually what happens is as I'm checking this stuff, Shauna's talking. Okay, so Donna's saying from Katie, do you think they're babies? Shauna has an inkling they might be babies or an orphanage. I was kind of leaning more toward maybe an asylum. We got some feedback from somebody on the YouTube video, and he was saying that they were for unmarked graves. So somebody had gone through before with dowsing rods and determined that graves were here and they were male or female. So I don't know. I don't know if dowsing rods can determine male or female. I know that with dowsing rods, you can pick up on there might be something that's buried there. As far as male and female, I don't know. So Shauna had asked, hey, where are you getting your information from? Is there some sort of written resource that we can refer to that will let us know that? So, and Donna Gorton's cat just yacked in the other room. But by all means, please go ahead and take care of that. Not a problem. From Bree Jones, could some of those old stones be used for religious reasons? Certain religious groups where my uncle is buried, there was a quote, most of them were lucky to either have child of or wife of, and it would be no names at all until the head of the family was buried. I understand what you mean from that. So those are more like family plots. So like you'd go into a certain area and you'd have like the family stone, and in fact at Lakeview in the Cleveland area, we have the family stone Ricksecker, right? And then everybody else is buried around it. Fortunately, mine, on that particular family plot, they all have names. But on other ones, as you walk around, you'll see mother, father, daughter, son, that sort of stuff. But you'll have that one bigger family stone to let you know what the family is. And yeah, sometimes you can, you're lucky to get anything more than mother, father, and things like that. But that's not what this is. This is just male, female. Rows of them. I would say probably at least 10 to a row, and we found 5 rows. So you're talking at least 50 people that are buried in this manner. We did not find any marker that explained what this was. There was no family stone to say, hey, this is the Smith family or whatever. The couple of people that were buried kind of intermixed in there. There were 2 people off to the one side, a husband and a wife. I can't imagine they had that many kids. She would be one hell of a woman to birth 50 children. And then there was one other stone that was from somebody who fought with, I think it was the 17th Illinois Division, but he had been in the military. And he was intermixed in there. So you had like these 3 stones that were intermixed in the first 30, and then the other 2 rows were like way off to the side. We almost didn't see them. So this is the mystery of this particular cemetery that we're trying to track this down. Cadavers, maybe. That's an interesting idea. That's from Deanna Bosley. Could they possibly be cadavers? Maybe. There's, well, like up the road a little ways is the Alton State Hospital. I know they have their own cemeteries, and this is why I ended up thinking asylum. It was like maybe some people from there were buried down in this cemetery. But if you do a little research into the cemeteries up there at that hospital, and I did look into that a little bit, they're marked with names. There are names and dates on those stones there. So I don't see why they wouldn't mark names down at Vaughn if they were marking names up there. So I don't think it's from there. Random cadavers from hospitals. I mean, maybe it would almost have to be like one mass dumping of 50 people, because all the stones are pretty much the same. Now I'm not a scientist and I'm not running tests on the patina on the stones, but they look all roughly cut at the same time. They're all the same font face, as far as the lettering on there. So pretty interesting. Deanna Bosley, is there an asylum nearby? There is. That would be the Alton State Hospital, but they do have their own cemeteries up there. So, but if there was an overflow, maybe. So I did specifically research that Alton State Hospital, Vaughn Cemetery. Haven't found anything yet going down that route. So it's a mystery. It's a mystery. I am going to take a second here to see if this will allow me to share now, because I really do want to share this on my personal page. And I'm not seeing anything. Fantastic. Thank you, Facebook. Appreciate that. All right. One more time. Anything. Oh, there we go. Now it'll let me do it. All right. So let's go ahead and share. Sorry for this, but I do want to, like I said, share that out on my personal page, because there's 5,000 there. There's only 4,000 here on a Road Media page. So there we go. All right. And I hope that shared to the right place, right? Post. Yes. Okay. Cool. All right, so let's see. Donna's throwing me some questions here that you guys have had. Let's take a look. So, per Shauna, I also contacted the City of Wood River's clerk. Should find an answer soon when local museum contacts her. Yeah, so that should be, if I recall correctly, was it Thursday or Friday, something like that? So it was a pretty quick response, and it sounded like from the general tone when Shauna read it to me, I think, was it this morning or last night or whenever it was, that they were pretty happy that somebody had an interest in the cemetery. So it'll be interesting to see if we can get some specific information from there. I mean, yeah, that's kind of I guess you would say one of the first sources to go to, but when you're hitting the research at night, they're not usually open. And as it is that, how much they're open is limited. So from Kathy, were there markings on the graves? No, it was just male, female, male, female. I'll throw the photo back up here. You can kind of see it there. This is how they all looked. So you can see it's not a straight on shot. I was trying to be a little bit artistic with it. But that's a male grave. This one was raised up a little bit. I mean, that just has to do with the weathering of the ground. Most of them were kind of sunk in. But that was it. So it's this it's like a brick, right, in the middle, surrounded by concrete. And it just says male. So it almost makes me wonder now, looking at this and just saying it's a brick. You don't usually see a brick in a grave marker. That's atypical. So now this has me wondering, was there perhaps some sort of accident with a building, tornado, or some sort of disaster in which there was a building collapse and these people perished within there? But see, then again, I would also think that they would know who those people were. Why would they not know who they are? I don't know. That's thinking out loud. Okay. So, a lot of questions coming in. So, let's see here. Per Candy, I feel like there was a fire in an orphanage, maybe that left many children unidentifiable. From Mickey Doll, are there any caretakers, people you'd contact? That's what Shauna was talking about. Don doesn't let me know. Several viewers are getting kids' energy, holding hands, or per Nicole, stillbirth. Well, and that's a good point there with stillbirth. And if I recall correctly, Shauna brought that up when we were at the cemetery. Yeah, and a lot of times with the stillbirth, they just said infant, on the graves like that. But you're talking about 50 all around the same time. That's a lot. What kind of epidemic would there have been in which 50 women suddenly had child stillbirths? I don't know. Like I said, just going through the old newspaper articles and resources like that, not finding any news of 50 anything in one shot being buried at Vaughn Cemetery. I mean, it got to the point where it was just separating the words off on their own. Came across a lot of different services being held there for people who had passed away. A lot of different meetings about the land. And then we were finding out some additional background information. So what really was interesting to me, other than the Pruitt thing that we came across with the Indian girl, was how over the years the cemetery would go into decay, weeds would grow up, people would vandalize it, and then all of a sudden there was a group of people that would come along and be like, oh, we got to fix it up. Sometimes it was the Boy Scouts, sometimes it was local groups, sometimes it was a church. But I probably about 4 or 5 different times I came across articles of the weeds are growing up. People are knocking the headstones over. There was one article that talked about people using the headstones as target practice. So that's going to be one thing when we go back there that I'm going to look for is, are there some of these stones that actually have bullet holes from when people were shooting at them, if you can believe that. So, but talking about some of those different knocked over stones, this was really, really cool about this cemetery. I really liked this one. So I'm going to bring this up, turn that off. Okay, this is the Garden of the Unknown. So this is the Instagram clip that I was talking about. I'll play the Instagram clip real quick.
This is very, very cool, and I highly respect this. A Garden of the Unknown. They've actually gathered up the different broken pieces from around the cemetery and put them in one spot here, rather than just leaving them lying about or tossing them into the woods. They have a spot here for them. This is totally awesome.
All right, so that is the Instagram clip, and this is the Garden of the Unknown. So this is really cool. I really, really highly respect this. What they did was all the broken headstones kind of tossed off to the side and whatnot, instead of leaving them tossed off to the side, or as some cemeteries do, where they toss them off into the woods, or they might stack them near a tree. They've actually displayed them here in what they call the Garden of the Unknown. So they're actually paying honor to these stones that have essentially been lost to time. And we were checking them out, see if we could read anything off of them. And you can't read the names. I mean, you see some design work there, but it's really, really weathered down. And so, I can understand why they would have a hard time trying to place these stones. So I thought this was really, really classy on their part. So people are asking, like Jolene Paul, where's this located? This is Vaughn Hill Cemetery, Wood River, Illinois. So if you're familiar at all with the Alton area, it's near there. So I see some interesting comments down in here. Deanna Bosley, y'all got to find out if there was a school for the blind there before. Interesting. So yeah, a lot of people are talking children. So and that was really Shauna's initial reaction to it as far as those stones. But this is really a classy move. I highly respect this, and to me it adds to the whole mystique of this particular cemetery. So you have all these stones of who knows what they are, male, female, no idea who they belong to. Then here you have headstones that you don't know where the headstones belong to. Out there somewhere in the fields are more graves. Some of these graves may not necessarily be recorded. Maybe this was the only record of who was buried there. And so now the stone is misplaced. So a lot of mysteries with this particular cemetery. Is definitely one that we are going to keep going back to and keep researching. I did mention the Wood River Massacre earlier, and so this is the stone for the Wood River Massacre. This is not the original marker. What's been kind of interesting doing our research is finding some information about what the original markers were. So on one of them, it had two of the boys here marked on it, and it said it actually did give the 1814 date, but even that particular article was it was really, really worn down. So there were multiple markers here, and what they did with these people when it happened, they didn't have any wood on hand, so they were actually chopping the nearby trees to the cemetery and making these kind of like makeshift coffins real quick. So the way they're buried in there, and there's a couple people per per coffin, for lack of a better term. So it's another thing that adds to the entire mystique of the whole thing. So you have this tragedy of the massacre and the victims that were buried there and how they had to be buried there. You have these male, female stones that we have no idea who they go to. There's the Garden of the Unknown with all of the displaced headstones. We don't know who they go to. I don't have the picture in here right now, but there's also a headstone there that basically it's hand carved. And Shauna, you probably remember this. You made a remark about it, of how the N was backwards. So whoever wrote it was and carved it in there was either uneducated or may have even been a child themselves, and maybe they were carving the name on there. So some really, really interesting stuff with this. It's not a large cemetery, it's a smaller cemetery, but a lot of interesting things going on with it. We're going to keep following up with this one some more. And I know I've taken a lot of time on just this one particular cemetery, but there's a lot of things there that are interesting to us about it. I mean, it's essentially half the show has been on this. So Deanna Bosley is saying there's a little boy there when y'all were there following you. He says his name is Jack. He was blind in one eye. He likes Shauna, followed her around a while y'all were there. Now, what's interesting is that when we first walked into the cemetery, Shauna immediately got buzzed. If you watch that video, I started off where I'm standing at the gate and I'm talking about, hey, we're here at the cemetery, and Shauna's already feeling stuff. We'd already gone inside. This happened to Shauna. I came back out to record an intro and went back in. So it's kind of interesting to see what Donna's throwing me down here as far as questions. Per Katrina, plague victims, possibly. Candy's thinking fire explosion. Bree still seeing kids. So several seeing a horse-drawn funerary coach. Per Robert, is there a lot of paranormal activity there? So that's what I was talking about here just a moment ago, was when we first walked in, just right there on the left-hand side, right along, the tree line there. Shauna got poked. She said it was like a stinging of a bee, or like a bee had landed on you, that kind of a feeling. So we hung around there for a little bit, kind of rummaged around the woods there a little bit. There's been times where we have found stones out in the woods that were kind of forgotten about. And Shauna will say she was not drawn to the woods, but there's 3 different times she went out into the woods while we were at that cemetery. And she's like, well, it's because we have found things in the woods before. And it's true. We have. And that's really interesting to us, of course, when we start finding stones that are out in the woods. But because it does happen. Yeah, Robert's like, yep, she just mentioned that. Yep. So Heather Steele, it's worth taking the time. I'd love to see this place. Yeah. Heather Steele, she's on my Instagram, posts a lot of different photos of cemeteries, some abandoned places, things like that. Yeah, you really would love this place. Very, very cool. There's actually a lot of great cemeteries around the area. So cool. So let's. I know we spent like half the show on that particular one. Let's move on a little bit now. Some of you. Probably many of you that have been watching us for a while, you may remember this piece. So I am going to talk about this a little bit and what this may be, because there's several viewers on here that are not familiar with this, and some people that maybe just need a little bit of a refresher. What this is, we're not sure. The way it sounds like rock, right? But it's also porous. You can see it's kind of porous in nature there. It's kind of got this underside. It looks like, in a lot of ways, it looks like a bone fragment, although it sounds like it's a rock. I've kind of examined it a little bit more. Could it possibly be concrete? And I don't really see that it's concrete. And I know we said we're going to get this examined, and we are. We haven't been so bogged down with everything else going on around here that we haven't taken it into anywhere around. I mean, we're out in the middle of nowhere anywhere, so we'd have to make a hike somewhere to go do it. But actually, what I'm going to do is, you guys remember the archaeologist, Dr. Heather Lynn. We're supposed to connect here sometime soon. So I was going to show this to her and be like, Heather, what do you think? So an archaeologist probably will have a better idea than me. So we'll see. Shauna thinks it's a rock, and maybe it is. It just, to me, has a lot of characteristics of a piece of bone. But let's talk into why, okay, I would suddenly just pick this up off the ground and think maybe this is a bone fragment. All right, so let's bring up Hickory Grove. So this is where we found it, at a cemetery in Jerseyville, Illinois. It used to be a cemetery. It is now a park with basketball courts and a jungle gym, and where children play all the time. They're playing on top of bodies that are still there. They did erect a monument in the back away from everything to say, oh yeah, by the way, there were people that were buried here, part of our past, part of our history, but they keep it away from the park so that it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind sort of thing. Yeah. So we found it. You can kind of see the trunk of the tree there. There's this rock. Now, we are walking down the path that cuts through this park. And I noticed this rock protruding out of the ground. And looking at it, and when you get a little closer to it, it looks like it may be the base of a monument that they didn't grab. It could be one of those things, because the tree's right next to it, that as the roots protrude out and grow larger, that it may be pushing this thing up. So this could actually be a monument from the original cemetery that was there before they ripped out all the headstones and turned it into a park. There are stories about how they originally used the headstones at the park, or that had been at the cemetery, as part of a path, paving stones for the path that was there. Those are no longer there. And Shauna's like, it's probably a bone. Yeah. We'll see. But yeah, a real sad story here about this. So I found the fragment not too far. It was basically just a little bit, if you just go straight down from this stone, it was amongst the grass there. So we'll see. I'll show it to the archaeologist, and we'll see what she says about it. But if it is, now, to me, and Shauna as well, and Shauna can probably talk about it there in the chat as well, and Donna or Deanna Bosley saying it's got energy. I imagine it does. It's something. I just it's something. To us, it's a real tragedy. I mean, they have a fantastic larger cemetery there, beautiful monuments, a lot of history within that cemetery as well, including the woman in black that we've talked about before. But this cemetery, Hickory Grove, this is like the original pioneers to the town. And we first discovered that there was a cemetery there when we were looking at some old maps. We were doing a paranormal investigation of the Cheney Mansion, which is part of the Historical Society there in Jerseyville. And in the one room, they have old land plats splayed out. And so we're looking at Jerseyville at the old maps. And, I saw, the cemetery that we always go to, Oak Grove. But then I saw this other smaller one not too far from it that said Old Cemetery. And then, of course, there was the where Cheney Mansion was. So it's kind of like in between the two. It's like, Shauna, what is this Old Cemetery? I don't know of any cemetery that's around there. It's like, no, we would, I mean, shoot, we go to all the cemeteries. We would have known about it. So then we asked our friend Carol Singer, who was running the place at the time. And she's like, oh, yeah, there had been a cemetery back there. But, the more affluent people decided that it would be better used as a park. And so they just leveled all the headstones, and they put the park right on. They did not take the bodies out. And they put the park right on top of it. And if you can imagine this, they had a pool in there at one time. The basketball court that's there now used to be a swimming pool. And I guess what happened at some point is the foundation of the swimming pool cracked. So if you can imagine, you have this swimming pool where bodies were, and the foundation's cracking. Oh my God, it's all kinds of crazy stuff. So they ended up filling that in and putting a basketball court there. But I mean, it's just to me very disrespectful, especially for your own town's history. To do that. And you tried to play nice and you tossed a monument in the back that's out of sight, out of mind, that is supposed to commemorate these people, but their bodies are still there. And this may be a piece of one of them, so not cool. Deanna, just replace the cemetery with the park. Yep. Let's see. Did Don toss me anything? Bree thinks that the fragment has bad mojo. Pershana, I remember when we first walked in and got grabbed. Yep. Okay, that's referring to the Vaughn Cemetery. Okay. So that's Hickory Grove. That's in Jerseyville, down the road. I did want to talk a little bit about. And when I get that checked out, we will definitely let you know what the final verdict is on this. I mean, by all accounts, if you listen, it does sound like a rock. It just has visual characteristics of being something else. So, and Candy, why did they do these things? Unreal. Yes, definitely unreal. Building, and hearing the pool story, you can't help but think of Poltergeist. When they built the pool and then all the bodies came up when it rained. Yeah, you can't help but think of that. So the other one, now going to the other travesties. Okay, so that's that mysterious grave. There's Belt Salem. So this is part of our lost cemetery search. We were going to the past few weekends. We have been meaning to go out and do some more lost cemeteries. It's been raining so much here. It's crazy. And then the one weekend I was out at Ohio Reformatory for the event out there. I went there and spoke on history and the paranormal. Belt Salem Cemeteries is, my gosh, it's probably one of the more beautiful lost cemeteries that we've come across. Now, this is like almost a ridiculous shot where this tree has crashed against this headstone, this monument, and that monument has not moved. That is a rock solid monument. It bore the weight of that thing crashing onto it, and it's, beautiful cemetery out in the woods. We almost missed it because of how far back in there and overgrown it is. A lot of little children in there. Shauna always connects with those children spirits and children graves that are in these types of cemeteries. But this is another, mysterious. When we do our cemetery crawls, more mysteries for us is just why a lot of these places get left and overgrown. They just get forgotten to time, and there it is. We've talked before and we've posted before about the Schumann Cemetery up around near where Shauna used to live, where her parents still are. And that one is, literally lost time in that the newer generation has no interest in it. The older generation would go there, clean it up, and they would have to come back later and clean it up some more. The newer generation just, has no interest in doing that. And I kind of get why. They don't have like a real connection to the people that are buried there because they didn't really know them. Even though they may be related, they're like, well, I'm related to the person, I didn't know them, so then have no interest of going in there and cleaning it up, where the older generation did know them, so they would go back there and clean it, and now they're too old to do that, so it's overgrown. Belt Salem, I imagine probably kind of the same thing, but there are some beautiful stones out there. Have some questions down here, and Donna, you're probably good to just not even worry about the throwing it on in the messenger now, because the chat is slowed down enough. If I can speak, the chat is slowed down enough where I can see it. It's crazy there at the beginning how fast the chat will go because people are joining and all that. Bree loves some of these old stones, definitely. Heather Steele, have you guys been to Mount Moriah in Philadelphia yet? It's unreal. I haven't. So, there's a lot of great cemeteries out in Philadelphia. The only time I've been to Philadelphia, it's crazy. I lived on the East Coast for decades, right? I've been to Philadelphia once. Of course, I had to go do the Rocky Steps. Also did the Muda Museum. Which now that one, like the soap woman, that skeleton, that's interesting. So, basically, it has to do with the way the fat broke down on the body, and they found that body downtown Philadelphia. They were digging up, here we go again, digging up an old cemetery so that they could put a building in its place. And they came across some of these bodies that had just decomposed differently, where the fat had turned into what looks like a soapy substance. So one of them's at the Muda Museum. Another one is at the Smithsonian. So I do have a video on the YouTube channel about, on the Muda Museum. Interesting time there. You're actually not supposed to take photos or video or whatever in there, so I had to get a little creative with the way I put that video together. But it's a very, very cool. If you ever go to Philadelphia, you have to go there. If you like macabre things, of course. Robert Hanna, is Bachelor's Grove Cemetery nearby? It is in Illinois, but it's not nearby. So it's kind of funny when people ask us, about Illinois, where we say, yeah, I'm in Illinois. Oh, so you're near Chicago? No. No. And Bachelor's Grove is on the other side of Chicago, so it's even further. Bachelor's Grove is probably like a good 5 hours away from here, something like that. Because it's basically between Chicago and Indiana somewhere. Haven't actually been there yet. But yeah, Chicago's like 4 hours from here. We're closer to St. Louis, actually. So, and Shauna's saying about 3 to 4 hours. So I guess maybe there's a quicker way to get there. I don't know, because I haven't been yet. But Dale Kazmarek's team. Dale was at the Haunted Road Media Paracon last year. We've had him on Edge of the Rabbit Hole. It was his team when they investigated, what was it, like 1991, where they caught that apparition at Bachelor's Grove, which is why it's become so famous. So Yeah, it was his team. My gosh, you think about it. How long ago was that now? Almost 30 years ago? Time flies. Time flies. All right. So Tom McNicholas says, I live near there. Well, Tom, how far is it from here? Let us know. Because we have to plan that out one of these days. It's a hike. It's a hike for us, for sure. All right. So, yeah, people are having connection issues. Internet for you, I guess. All right. So, okay. And Dustin has a good question here. Why can't people go in there and fix it up? They can raise funds to keep it clean. Well, it's one, desire. People have to have the desire to want to do that. And like I was saying earlier, those people that would be able to do that have kind of lost that interest. Could the Historical Society do it? Yeah, but there's only so much that a Historical Society can do. They kind of concentrate on the things that are like kind of right in front of them. For that county, Jersey County, there's a lot of stuff there centered in Jerseyville. So there's a Cheney Mansion, but there's all those cabins that are back behind it. There's the old church that they've brought onto the property, the old school. They have the whole big, the other, I don't even know what you want to call it, the other building. It has all the other artifacts and everything within it, I guess museum building for lack of a better term. So there's a lot of other things that they're kind of concentrating on, that their hands are in. So some cemetery that's often, one of the corners of the county that almost nobody goes to, they don't have a real interest in that. Also, to get there, I'm pretty sure we had to walk on private property. So there's also accessibility issues to some of these different places. So in doing our research for the lost and abandoned cemeteries, a lot of them are like out there in the fields. Like, it might be 100 yards, in some direction. You might actually be able to say, oh, I think that's it over there. But you have to be cognizant of the fact that you might be trespassing and walking onto private property. So with Belt Salem, it was pretty much out in the middle of nowhere. Lots of cover of the woods, which is one of the reasons why we had a hard time trying to find it. So the property that it was on, I say it was private property, but it also was uninhabited at the time. There was an abandoned mobile home that was there, and like nothing else. Oh, besides all the appliances that had been dumped into the woods. So that was a tragedy to see as well, were all the different appliances dumped into the woods there. So don't know what the heck was going on there. But if you're looking for spare parts to maybe your oven or your dishwasher or something like that, it's probably the place to go. Yeah. All right. Tom was just saying Facebook's slow tonight. Okay. So what was this about? I saw Shauna's comment in here that we've been to all of them in Campsville. About Hardin. We've basically done all the ones around Campsville because that's where Shauna's originally from. As far as like other areas of Calhoun County, sporadic as far as what we've gotten to. So, okay. So yeah, so Kaylee's in the chat. Cool. Hey, how you doing? All right. So anything else, guys? We covered a lot of stuff here. Since I've kind of had to run a monologue here tonight, my voice is starting to get a little hoarse. So that is Kaylee and Sherry's on Sherry's account right now. Sometimes it's Shauna's mother that's on Sherry's account. And I would wonder if some of those cemeteries around Hardin right now aren't flooded. So with all the water that's out there right now. Somehow you guys got a Charles Manson down there. Yeah. All right. So, all right. I think, we've gone on for 50 minutes at least. If there's any other questions you guys have down there, go ahead, throw them in there. we'll be, like I said, we'll be following up some more on the Wood River stuff and specifically Vaughn Cemetery. There's other tie-ins into the area that we're working on. So we had our Alton video series that we were working on. Right now, with all the flooding, it's made it a little difficult because some of the things that we wanted to do were there by the river. So, speaking of cemeteries, there was one that was on Smallpox Island. If this is one of those mysterious things. Okay, so we can talk about this for a few minutes. Smallpox Island is where the old federal prison that was used during the Civil War, that was there in Alton for many years, that Ghost Adventures incorrectly said that Mineral Springs Hotel was built out of, even though Dave told him otherwise. So the soldiers that contracted smallpox there were taken to an island across from Alton. It was actually closer toward the Missouri side. It was been called many things over the years. It was called Sunflower Island at one point because of all the sunflowers that would grow up over there. It was called McPike Island for a while when the McPike family bought it. But they had a quarantine of smallpox, and they put all the soldiers that contracted smallpox in there. They also buried them there. Years later, in the 30s, when they were putting in a new dam, they decided that they were going to obliterate this island to put the dam in because it was in their way. So they started dredging up the island, and lo and behold, they started dredging up all these skeletons as well. So for decades after the fact, there were times that parts of these bodies were being washed up on shore. So very creepy indeed. There are some ghost stories that are associated with that island, which we will get into when we do that video, when the water finally recedes a little bit, and we're able to do a little bit more out there. Ghost stories associated with it. There's the McPike tie-in. So a lot of interesting stuff with that particular, what had been a cemetery. So Tim Schoen wants me to do it. The Haunted Road. Okay, fine, Tim. Here we go. Haunted Road Roast. It helps you hunt ghosts. There you go. That's for Tim, since he was asking about it. Nick Boulay is wearing his Haunted Road Media hat. Very cool. Robert Hanna, is Resurrection Cemetery near Chicago as well? Yes, it is. Heard so much about Resurrection Mary. Tom McNicholas used to live down the street from there as well. So Tom has lived down the street from all sorts of cool Chicago cemeteries. Cool. All right, everybody. So have a great night. We will see you next time, and check out the podcasts as well. This will go up on podcast later for those that miss it. And of course, we do other stuff out there in the podcast as well. And of course, Haunted Road Media YouTube channel, youtube.com/Haunted Road Media. Till next time, everybody, have a great night.